He'll suffer then with suspense, won't he? That's all, and I am very glad of it." Tears of pity for Jude's approaching suffering at her hands mingled with those which had surged up in pity for herself. Then the slim little wife of a husband whose person was disagreeable to her, the ethereal, fine-nerved, sensitive girl, quite unfitted by temperament and instinct to fulfill the conditions of the matrimonial relation with Phillotson, possibly with scarce any man, walked fitfully along and panted and brought weariness into her eyes by gazing and worrying hopelessly. Phillotson met her at the arrival station, and seeing that she was troubled, thought it must be owing to the depressing effect of her aunt's death and funeral. He began telling her of his day's doings, and how his friend Gillingham, a neighbouring schoolmaster whom he had not seen for years, had called upon him. While ascending to the town, seated on the top of the omnibus beside him, she said suddenly, and with an air of self-chastisement, regarding the white road and its bordering bushes of hazel, "Richard, I let Mr. Fawley hold my hand a long while. I don't know whether you think it wrong." He, waking apparently from thoughts of far different mould, said vaguely, "Oh, did you? What did you do that for?" "I don't know. He wanted to, and I let him." "I hope it pleased him. I should think it was hardly a novelty." They lapsed into silence. Had this been a case in the court of an omniscient judge, he might have entered on his notes the curious fact that Sue had placed the minor for the major indiscretion, and had not said a word about the kiss. After tea that evening, Phillotson sat balancing the school registers. She remained in an unusually silent, tense, and restless condition, and at last, saying she was tired, went to bed early. When Phillotson arrived upstairs, weary with the drudgery of the attendance numbers, it was 11:45. Entering their chamber, which by day commanded a view of some 30 or 40 miles over the Vale of Blackmoor, and even into outer Wessex, he went to the window, and pressing his face against the pane, gazed with hard-breathing fixity into the mysterious darkness which now covered the far-reaching scene. He was musing. "I think," he said at last, without turning his head, "that I must get the committee to change the school stationer. All the copybooks are sent wrong this time." There was no reply. Thinking Sue was dozing, he went on, "And there must be a rearrangement of that ventilator in the classroom. The wind blows down upon my head unmercifully and gives me the earache." As the silence seemed more absolute than ordinarily, he turned round. The heavy, gloomy oak wainscot, which extended over the walls upstairs and down in the dilapidated old Grove Place, and the massive chimney-piece reaching to the ceiling, stood in odd contrast to the new and shining brass bedstead and the new suite of birch furniture that he had bought for her, the two styles seeming to nod to each other across 3 centuries upon the shaking floor. "Sue," he said, this being the way in which he pronounced her name. She was not in the bed, though she had apparently been there, the clothes on her side being flung back. Thinking she might have forgotten some kitchen detail and gone downstairs for a moment to see to it, he pulled off his coat and idled quietly enough for a few minutes, when, finding she did not come, he went out upon the landing, candle in hand, and said again, "Sue!" "Yes?" came back to him in her voice from the distant kitchen quarter. "What are you doing down there at midnight, tiring yourself out for nothing?" "I am not sleepy, I am reading, and there is a larger fire here." He went to bed. Some time in the night he awoke. She was not there even now. Lighting a candle, he hastily stepped out upon the landing and again called her name. She answered yes, as before, but the tones were small and confined, and whence they came he could not at first understand. Under the staircase was a large clothes closet without a window. They seemed to come from it. The door was shut, and there was no lock or other fastening. Phillotson, alarmed, went towards it, wondering if she had suddenly become deranged. "What are you doing in there?" he asked. "Not to disturb you. I came here as it was so late." "But there's no bed, is there? And no ventilation. Why, you'll be suffocated if you stay all night." "Oh, no, I think not. Don't trouble about me." "But—" Phillotson seized the knob and pulled at the door. She had fastened it inside with a piece of string, which broke at his pull. There being no bedstead, she had flung down some rugs and made a little nest for herself in the very cramped quarters the closet afforded. When he looked in upon her, she sprang out of her lair, great-eyed and trembling. "You ought not to have pulled open the door," she cried excitedly. "It is not becoming in you. Oh, will you go away? Please, will you?" She looked so pitiful and pleading in her white nightgown against the shadowy lumber hole that he was quite worried. She continued to beseech him not to disturb her. He said, "I've been kind to you, and given you every liberty, and it is monstrous that you should feel in this way." "Yes," said she, weeping, "I know that. It is wrong and wicked of me, I suppose. I am very sorry, but it is not I altogether that am to blame." "Who is, then? Am I?" "No, I don't know. The universe, I suppose. Things in general, because they are so horrid and cruel." "Well, it is no use talking like that, making a man's house so unseemly at this time o' night. Eliza will hear if we don't mind." He meant the servant. "Just think if either of the parsons in this town was to see us now. I hate such eccentricities, Sue. There's no order or regularity in your sentiments, but I won't intrude on you further. Only I would advise you not to shut the door too tight, or I shall find you stifled tomorrow." On rising the next morning, he immediately looked into the closet, but Sue had already gone downstairs. There was a little nest where she had lain, and spiders' webs hung overhead. "What must a woman's aversion be when it is stronger than her fear of spiders?" he said bitterly. He found her sitting at the breakfast table, and the meal began almost in silence. The burghers walking past upon the pavement, or rather roadway, pavements being scarce here, which was 2 or 3 feet above the level of the parlour floor. They nodded down to the happy couple their morning greetings as they went on. "Richard," she said all at once, "would you mind my living away from you?" "Away from me? Why, that's what you were doing when I married you. What, then, was the meaning of marrying at all?" "You wouldn't like me any the better for telling you." "I don't object to know." "Because I thought I could do nothing else. You had got my promise a long time before that, remember. Then as time went on I regretted I had promised you, and was trying to see an honourable way to break it off. But as I couldn't, I became rather reckless and careless about the conventions. Then you know what scandals were spread, and how I was turned out of the training school you had taken such time and trouble to prepare me for and get me into, and this frightened me, and it seemed then that the one thing I could do would be to let the engagement stand. Of course, I, of all people, ought not to have cared what was said, for it was just what I fancied I never did care for. But I was a coward, as so many women are, and my theoretic unconventionality broke down. If that had not entered into the case, it would have been better to have hurt your feelings once for all then, than to marry you and hurt them all my life after. And you were so generous in never giving credit for a moment to the rumour. I am bound in honesty to tell you that I weighed its probability and inquired of your cousin about it." "Ah!" she said, with pained surprise. "I didn't doubt you." "But you inquired." "I took his word." Her eyes had filled. "He wouldn't have inquired. she said, "but you haven't answered me. Will you let me go away? I know how irregular it is of me to ask it." "It is irregular." "But I do ask it. Domestic laws should be made according to temperaments, which should be classified. If people are at all peculiar in character, they have to suffer from the very rules that produce comfort in others. Will you let me?" "But we married—" "What is the use of thinking of laws and ordinances," she burst out, "if they make you miserable when you know you are committing no sin?" "But you are committing a sin in not liking me." "I do like you, but I didn't reflect that it would be so much more than that. For a man and woman to live on intimate terms when one feels as I do is adultery, in any circumstances, however legal. There, I've said it. Will you let me, Richard?" "You distress me, Susanna, by such importunity." "Why can't we agree to free each other? We made the compact, and surely we can cancel it. Not legally, of course, but we can morally, especially as no new interests in the shape of children have arisen to be looked after. Then we might be friends and meet without pain to either. Oh, Richard, be my friend and have pity. We shall both be dead in a few years, and then what will it matter to anybody that you relieved me from constraint for a little while? I dare say you think me eccentric or supersensitive or something absurd. Well, why should I suffer for what I was born to be if it doesn't hurt other people?" "But it does. It hurts me, and you vowed to love me." "Yes, that's it. I am in the wrong. I always am. It is as culpable to bind yourself to love always as to believe a creed always, and as silly as to vow always to like a particular food or drink." "And do you mean, by living away from me, living by yourself?" "Well, if you insisted, yes. But I meant living with Jude." "As his wife?" "As I choose." Phillotson writhed. Sue continued, "She or he who lets the world or his own portion of it choose his plan of life for him has no need of any other faculty than the ape-like one of imitation. J.S. Mill's words, those are. I have been reading it up. Why can't you act upon them? I wish to, always." "What do I care about J.S. Mill?" moaned he. "I only want to lead a quiet life. Do you mind my saying that I have guessed what never once occurred to me before our marriage, that you were in love, and are in love, with Jude Fawley?" "You may go on guessing that I am, since you have begun. But do you suppose that if I had been, I should have asked you to let me go and live with him?" The ringing of the school bell saved Phillotson from the necessity of replying at present to what apparently did not strike him as being such a convincing argumentum ad verecundium as she, in her loss of courage at the last moment, meant it to appear. She was beginning to be so puzzling and unstateable that he was ready to throw in with her other little peculiarities the extremest request which a wife could make. They proceeded to the schools that morning as usual, Sue entering the classroom where he could see the back of her head through the glass partition whenever he turned his eyes that way. As he went on giving and hearing lessons, his forehead and eyebrows twitched from concentrated agitation of thought, till at length he tore a scrap from a sheet of scribbling paper and wrote, "Your request prevents my attending to work at all. I don't know what I am doing. Was it seriously made?" He folded the piece of paper very small, and gave it to a little boy to take to Sue. The child toddled off into the classroom. Phillotson saw his wife turn and take the note, and the bend of her pretty head as she read it, her lips slightly crisped to prevent undue expression under fire of so many young eyes. He could not see her hands, but she changed her position, and soon the child returned, bringing nothing in reply. In a few minutes, however, One of Sue's class appeared, with a little note similar to his own. These words only were penciled therein: "I am sincerely sorry to say that it was seriously made." Phillotson looked more disturbed than before, and the meeting place of his brows twitched again. In 10 minutes he called up the child he had just sent to her, and dispatched another missive. "God knows I don't want to thwart you in any reasonable way. My whole thought is to make you comfortable and happy, but I cannot agree to such a preposterous notion as your going to live with your lover. You would lose everybody's respect and regard, and so should I." After an interval a similar part was enacted in the classroom, and an answer came: "I know you mean my good, but I don't want to be respectable." To produce human development in its richest diversity, to quote your Humboldt, is to my mind far above respectability. No doubt my tastes are low, in your view, hopelessly low. If you won't let me go to him, will you grant me this one request? Allow me to live in your house in a separate way?" To this he returned no answer. She wrote again: "I know what you think, but cannot you have pity on me? I beg you to. I implore you to be merciful. I would not ask if I were not almost compelled by what I can't bear. No poor woman has ever wished more than I that Eve had not fallen, so that, as the primitive Christians believed, some harmless mode of vegetation might have peopled paradise. But I won't trifle. Be kind to me, even though I have not been kind to you. I will go away, go abroad, anywhere, and never trouble you." Nearly an hour passed, and then he returned an answer: "I do not wish to pain you. How well you know I don't. Give me a little time. I am disposed to agree to your last request." One line from her: "Thank you from my heart, Richard. I do not deserve your kindness." All day Phillotson bent a dazed regard upon her through the glazed partition, and he felt as lonely as when he had not known her. But he was as good as his word, and consented to her living apart in the house. At first, when they met at meals, she had seemed more composed under the new arrangement, but the irksomeness of their position worked on her temperament, and the fibres of her nature seemed strained like harp-strings. She talked vaguely and indiscriminately to prevent his talking pertinently. 4. Phillotson was sitting up late, as was often his custom, trying to get together the materials for his long-neglected hobby of Roman antiquities. For the first time since reviving the subject, he felt a return of his old interest in it. He forgot time and place, and when he remembered himself and descended to rest, it was nearly 2 o'clock. His preoccupation was such that, though he now slept on the other side of the house, he mechanically went to the room that he and his wife had occupied when he first became a tenant of Old Grove Place, which since his differences with Sue had been hers exclusively. He entered and unconsciously began to undress. There was a cry from the bed, and a quick movement. Before the schoolmaster had realized where he was, he perceived Sue starting up half awake, staring wildly, and springing out upon the floor on the side away from him, which was towards the window. This was somewhat hidden by the canopy of the bedstead, and in a moment he heard her flinging up the sash. Before he had thought that she meant to do more than get air, she had mounted upon the sill and leapt out. She disappeared in the darkness, and he heard her fall below. Phillotson, horrified, ran downstairs, striking himself sharply against the newel in his haste. Opening the heavy door, he ascended the 2 or 3 steps to the level of the ground, and there on the gravel before him lay a white heap. Phillotson seized it in his arms, and bringing Sue into the hall, seated her on a chair, where he gazed at her by the flapping light of the candle which he had set down in the draught on the bottom stair. She had certainly not broken her neck. She looked at him with eyes that seemed not to take him in, and though not particularly large in general, they appeared so now. She pressed her side and rubbed her arm, as if conscious of pain, then stood up, averting her face in evident distress at his gaze. "Thank God, you are not killed, though it's not for want of trying. Not much hurt, I hope." Her fall, in fact, had not been a serious one, probably owing to the lowness of the old rooms and to the high level of the ground without. Beyond a scraped elbow and a blow in the side, she had apparently incurred little harm. "I was asleep, I think," she began, her pale face still turned away from him, "and something frightened me, a terrible dream. I thought I saw you." The actual circumstances seemed to come back to her, and she was silent. Her cloak was hanging at the back of the door, and the wretched Phillotson flung it round her. "Shall I help you upstairs?" he asked drearily, for the significance of all this sickened him of himself and of everything. "No, thank you, Richard. I am very little hurt. I can walk." "You ought to lock your door," he mechanically said, as if lecturing in school. "Then no one could intrude even by accident." "I have tried. It won't lock. All the doors are out of order." The aspect of things was not improved by her admission. She ascended the staircase slowly, the waving light of the candle shining on her. Phillotson did not approach her, or attempt to ascend himself till he heard her enter her room. Then he fastened up the front door, and returning, sat down on the lower stairs, holding the newel with one hand and bowing his face into the other. Thus he remained for a long, long time, a pitiable object enough to one who had seen him, till raising his head and sighing a sigh which seemed to say that the business of his life must be carried on, whether he had a wife or no, he took the candle and went upstairs to his lonely room on the other side of the landing. No further incident touching the matter between them occurred till the following evening, when immediately school was over, Phillotson walked out of Shaston, saying he required no tea, and not informing Sue where he was going. He descended from the town level by a steep road in a northwesterly direction, and continued to move downwards till the soil changed from its white dryness to a tough brown clay. He was now on the low alluvial beds, where dun cliff is the traveller's mark, and clouty stars are rolling dark. More than once he looked back in the increasing obscurity of evening. Against the sky was Shaston, dimly visible, on the grey-topped height of Palador, as pale day wore away. The new-lit lights from its windows burnt with a steady shine as if watching him, one of which windows was his own. Above it he could just discern the pinnacled tower of Trinity Church. The air down here, tempered by the thick damp bed of tenacious clay, was not as it had been above, but soft and relaxing, so that when he had walked a mile or two he was obliged to wipe his face with his handkerchief. Leaving Duncliffe Hill on the left, he proceeded without hesitation through the shade, as a man goes on, night or day, in a district over which he has played as a boy. He had walked altogether about 4½ miles, where Stour receives her strength from 6 clear fountains fed, when he crossed a tributary of the Stour and reached Leadington, a little town of 3,000 or 4,000 inhabitants, where he went on to the boys' school and knocked at the door of the master's residence. A boy pupil-teacher opened it, and to Phillotson's inquiring if Mr. Gillingham was at home, replied that he was, going at once off to his own house and leaving Phillotson to find his way in as he could. He discovered his friend putting away some books from which he had been giving evening lessons. The light of the paraffin lamp fell on Phillotson's face, pale and wretched by contrast with his friends, who had a cool, practical look. They had been schoolmates in boyhood and fellow students at Wintoncester Training College many years before this time. "Glad to see you, Dick. But you don't look well. Nothing the matter?" Phillotson advanced without replying, and Gillingham closed the cupboard and pulled up beside his visitor. "Why, you haven't been here, let me see, since you were married." "I called, you know, but you were out, and upon my word it is such a climb after dark that I have been waiting till the days are longer before lumbering up again. I'm glad you didn't wait, however." Though well-trained and even proficient masters, they occasionally used a dialect word of their boyhood to each other in private. "I've come, George, to explain to you my reasons for taking a step that I am about to take, so that you, at least, will understand my motives if other people question them anywhen, as they may, indeed certainly will. But anything is better than the present condition of things. God forbid that you should ever have such an experience as mine." "Sit down. You don't mean anything wrong between you and Mrs. Phillotson?" "I do. My wretched state is that I've a wife I love, who not only does not love me, but, well, I won't say. I know her feeling. I should prefer hatred from her." "Shh! And the sad part of it is that she is not so much to blame as I. She was a pupil teacher under me, as you know, and I took advantage of her inexperience, and told her out for walks, and got her to agree to a long engagement before she well knew her own mind. Afterwards she saw somebody else, but she blindly fulfilled her engagement." "Loving the other?" "Yes, with a curious tender solicitude, seemingly, though her exact feeling for him is a riddle to me, and to him too, I think, possibly to herself. She is one of the oddest creatures I ever met. However, I have been struck with these two facts: the extraordinary sympathy or similarity between the pair. He is her cousin, which perhaps accounts for some of it. They seem to be one person split in two, and with her unconquerable aversion to myself as a husband, even though she may like me as a friend, 'tis too much to bear longer. She has conscientiously struggled against it, but to no purpose. I cannot bear it, I cannot. I can't answer her arguments. She has read 10 times as much as I. Her intellect sparkles like diamonds, while mine smoulders like brown paper. She is one too many for me. She'll get over it, good now." "Never. It is, but I won't go into it. There are reasons why she never will. At last she calmly and firmly asked if she might leave me and go to him. The climax came last night, when, owing to my entering her room by accident, she jumped out of the window. So strong was her dread of me. She pretended it was a dream, but that was to soothe me. Now, when a woman jumps out of a window without caring whether she breaks her neck or no, she's not to be mistaken, and this being the case, I have come to a conclusion: that it is wrong to so torture a fellow creature any longer, and I won't be the inhuman wretch to do it, cost what it may." "What? You'll let her go, and with her lover?" "Whom with is her matter. I shall let her go, with him certainly, if she wishes. I know I may be wrong. I know I can't logically or religiously defend my concession to such a wish of hers, or harmonize it with the doctrines I was brought up in. Only I know one thing. Something within me tells me I am doing wrong in refusing her. I, like other men, profess to hold that if a husband gets such a so-called preposterous request from his wife, the only course that can possibly be regarded as right and proper and honorable in him is to refuse it, and put her virtuously under lock and key, and murder her lover, perhaps. But is that essentially right and proper and honourable, or is it contemptibly mean and selfish? I don't profess to decide. I simply am going to act by instinct and let principles take care of themselves. If a person who has blindly walked into a quagmire cries for help, I am inclined to give it, if possible. But, you see, there's the question of neighbours and society. What will happen if everybody— Oh, I am not going to be a philosopher any longer. I only see what's under my eyes. Well, I don't agree with your instinct, Dick, said Gillingham gravely. I am quite amazed, to tell the truth, that such a sedate, plodding fellow as you should have entertained such a craze for a moment. You said when I called that she was puzzling and peculiar. I think you are. Have you ever stood before a woman whom you know to be intrinsically a good woman while she has pleaded for release, been the man she has knelt to and implored indulgence of? I'm thankful to say I haven't. Then I don't think you are in a position to give an opinion. I have been that man, and it makes all the difference in the world if one has any manliness or chivalry in him. I have not the remotest idea, living apart from women as I have done for so many years, that merely taking a woman to church and putting a ring upon her finger could by any possibility involve one in such a daily, continuous tragedy as that now shared by her and me. Well, I could admit some excuse for letting her leave you, provided she kept to herself, but to go attended by a cavalier, that makes a difference. Not a bit. Suppose, as I believe, she would rather endure her present misery than be made to promise to keep apart from him. All that is a question for herself. It is not the same thing at all as the treachery of living on with a husband and playing him false. However, she has not distinctly implied living with him as wife, although I think she means to. And to the best of my understanding, it is not an ignoble, merely animal feeling between the two. That is the worst of it, because it makes me think their affection will be enduring. I did not mean to confess to you that in the first jealous weeks of my marriage, before I had come to my right mind, I hid myself in the school one evening when they were together there, and I heard what they said. I am ashamed of it now, though I suppose I was only exercising a legal right. I found from their manner that an extraordinary affinity or sympathy entered into their attachment, which somehow took away all the flavour of grossness. Their supreme desire is to be together, to share each other's emotions and fancies and dreams. Platonic. Well, no. Shelleyan would be nearer to it. They remind me of, what are their names? Leon and Cythna. Also of Paul and Virginia a little. The more I reflect, the more entirely I am on their side. But if people did as you want to do, there'd be a general domestic disintegration. The family would no longer be the social unit. Yes, I am all abroad, I suppose, said Phillotson sadly. I was never a very bright reasoner, you remember, and yet I don't see why the woman and the children should not be the unit without the man. By the Lord Harry, matriarchy! Does she say all this, too? Oh, no. She little thinks I have outsued Sue in this, all in the last 12 hours. It will upset all received opinion hereabout. Good God, what will Shaston say? I don't say that it won't. I don't know. As I say, I am only a feeler, not a reasoner. Now, said Gillingham, let us take it quietly and have something to drink over it. He went under the stairs and produced a bottle of cider wine, of which they drank a rummer each. I think you are rafted and not yourself, he continued. Do go back and make up your mind to put up with a few whims, but keep her. I hear on all sides that she's a charming young thing. Ah, yes, that's the bitterness of it. Well, I won't stay. I have a long walk before me." Gillingham accompanied his friend a mile on his way, and at parting expressed his hope that this consultation, singular as its subject was, would be the renewal of their old comradeship. "Stick to her," were his last words, flung into the darkness after Phillotson, from which his friend answered, "Aye, aye." And when Phillotson was alone under the clouds of night, and no sound was audible but that of the purling tributaries of the Stour, he said, "So, Gillingham, my friend, you had no stronger arguments against it than those." "I think she ought to be smacked and brought to her senses, that's what I think," murmured Gillingham as he walked back alone. The next morning came, and at breakfast Phillotson told Sue, "You may go, with whom you will. I absolutely and unconditionally agree." Having once come to this conclusion, it seemed to Phillotson more and more indubitably the true one. His mild serenity at the sense that he was doing his duty by a woman who was at his mercy almost overpowered his grief at relinquishing her. Some days passed, and the evening of their last meal together had come. A cloudy evening with wind, which indeed was very seldom absent in this elevated place. How permanently it was imprinted upon his vision, that look of her as she glided into the parlour to tea, a slim, flexible figure, her face strained from its roundness, and marked by the pallors of restless days and nights, suggesting tragic possibilities quite at variance with her times of buoyancy, a trying of this morsel and that, and an inability to eat either. Her nervous manner, begotten of a fear lest he should be injured by her course, might have been interpreted by a stranger as displeasure that Phillotson intruded his presence on her for the few brief minutes that remained. "You had better have a slice of ham, or an egg, or something, with your tea. You can't travel on a mouthful of bread and butter." She took the slice he helped her to, and they discussed, as they sat, trivial questions of housekeeping, such as where he would find the key of this or that cupboard, what little bills were paid, and what not. "I am a bachelor by nature, as you know, Sue," he said, in a heroic attempt to put her at her ease, "so that being without a wife will not really be irksome to me, as it might be to other men who have had one a little while. I have, too, this grand hobby in my head of writing the Roman antiquities of Wessex, which will occupy all my spare hours. If you will send me some of the manuscript to copy at any time, as you used to, I will do it with so much pleasure," she said, with amenable gentleness. "I should much like to be some help to you still, as a friend." Phillotson mused and said, "No, I think we ought to be really separate, if we are to be at all. And for this reason, that I don't wish to ask you any questions, and particularly wish you not to give me information as to your movements, or even your address. Now, what money do you want? You must have some, you know." "Oh, of course, Richard, I couldn't think of having any of your money to go away from you with. I don't want any either. I have enough of my own to last me for a long while, and Jude will let me have—" "I would rather not know anything about him, if you don't mind. You are free, absolutely, and your course is your own." "Very well. But I'll just say that I have packed only a change or two of my own personal clothing, and one or two little things besides that are my very own. I wish you would look into my trunk before it is closed. Besides that, I only have a small parcel that will go into Jude's portmanteau. Of course I shall do no such thing as examine your luggage. I wish you would take 3/4 of the household furniture. I don't want to be bothered with it. I have a sort of affection for a little of it that belonged to my poor mother and father, but the rest you are welcome to whenever you like to send for it. That I shall never do. You go by the 6:30 train, don't you? It is now 5:45. You don't seem very sorry I am going, Richard." "Oh, no, perhaps not. I like you much for how you have behaved. It is a curious thing that directly I have begun to regard you as not my husband, but as my old teacher, I like you. I won't be so affected as to say I love you, because you know I don't, except as a friend, but you do seem that to me." Sue was for a few moments a little tearful at these reflections, and then the station omnibus came round to take her up. Phillotson saw her things put on the top, handed her in, and was obliged to make an appearance of kissing her as he wished her good-bye, which she quite understood and imitated. From the cheerful manner in which they parted, the omnibus man had no other idea than that she was going for a short visit. When Phillotson got back into the house, he went upstairs and opened the window in the direction the omnibus had taken. Soon the noise of its wheels died away. He came down then, his face compressed like that of one bearing pain. He put on his hat and went out, following by the same route for nearly a mile. Suddenly turning round, he came home. He had no sooner entered than the voice of his friend Gillingham greeted him from the front room. "I could make nobody hear, so finding your door open, I walked in and made myself comfortable. I said I would call, you remember." "Yes. I am much obliged to you, Gillingham, particularly for coming tonight. How is Mrs.—" "She is quite well. She is gone, just gone. That's her teacup that she drank out of only an hour ago, and that's the plate she—" Phillotson's throat got choked up, and he could not go on. He turned and pushed the tea-things aside. "Have you had any tea, by the way?" he asked presently in a renewed voice. "No, yes, never mind," said Gillingham, preoccupied. "Gone, you say she is?" "Yes. I could have died for her, but I wouldn't be cruel to her in the name of the law. She is, as I understand, gone to join her lover. What they are going to do I cannot say. Whatever it may be, she has my full consent to." There was a stability, a ballast, in Phillotson's pronouncement which restrained his friend's comment. "Shall I leave you?" he asked. "No, no. It is a mercy to me that you have come. I have some articles to arrange and clear away. Would you help me?" Gillingham assented, and having gone to the upper rooms, the schoolmaster opened drawers and began taking out all Sue's things that she had left behind, and laying them in a large box. "She wouldn't take all I wanted her to," he continued, "but when I made up my mind to her going to live in her own way, I did make up my mind. Some men would have stopped at an agreement to separate. I've gone into all that, and don't wish to argue it. I was and am the most old-fashioned man in the world on the question of marriage. In fact, I had never thought critically about its ethics at all. But certain facts stared me in the face, and I couldn't go against them." They went on with the packing silently. When it was done, Phillotson closed the box and turned the key. "There," he said, "to adorn her in somebody's eyes, never again in mine." 5. 24 hours before this time, Sue had written the following note to Jude. "It is as I told you, and I am leaving tomorrow evening. Richard and I thought it could be done with less obtrusiveness after dark. I feel rather frightened, and therefore ask you to be sure you are on the Melchester platform to meet me. I arrive at a little to 7. I know you will, of course, dear Jude, but I feel so timid that I can't help begging you to be punctual. He has been so very kind to me through it all. Now to our meeting. S." As she was carried by the omnibus farther and farther down from the mountain town, the single passenger that evening, she regarded the receding road with a sad face, but no hesitation was apparent therein. The up train by which she was departing stopped by signal only. To Sue it seemed strange that such a powerful organization as a railway train should be brought to a standstill on purpose for her, a fugitive from her lawful home. The up-train by which she was departing stopped by signal only. To Sue it seemed strange that such a powerful organization as a railway train should be brought to a standstill on purpose for her, a fugitive from her lawful home. The 20 minutes' journey drew towards its close, and Sue began gathering her things together to alight. At the moment that the train came to a standstill by the Melchester platform, a hand was laid on the door, and she beheld Jude. He entered the compartment promptly. He had a black bag in his hand, and was dressed in the dark suit he wore on Sundays and in the evenings after work. Altogether he looked a very handsome young fellow, his ardent affection for her burning in his eyes. "Oh, Jude!" She clasped his hand with both of hers, and her tense state caused her to simmer over in a little succession of dry sobs. I am so glad. I get out here?" "No, I get in, dear one. I've packed. Besides this bag, I've only a big box which is labelled." "But don't I get out? Aren't we going to stay here?" "We couldn't possibly, don't you see? We are known here. I, at any rate, am well known. I've booked for Aldbrickham, and here's your ticket for the same place, as you have only one to here." "I thought we should have stayed here," she repeated. "It wouldn't have done at all." "Ah, perhaps not." "There wasn't time for me to write and say the place I had decided on. Aldbrickham is a much bigger town, 60 or 70,000 inhabitants, and nobody knows anything about us there." "And you have given up your cathedral work here?" "Yes. It was rather sudden, your message coming unexpectedly. Strictly I might have been made to finish out the week, but I pleaded urgency and I was let off. I would have deserted any day at your command, dear Sue. I would have deserted more than that for you." "I fear I am doing you a lot of harm, ruining your prospects of the church, ruining your progress in your trade, everything." "The church is no more to me. Let it lie. I am not to be one of the soldier saints who, row on row, burn upward each to his point of bliss, if any such there be. My point of bliss is not upward, but here." "Oh, I seem so bad, upsetting men's courses like this," said she, taking up in her voice the emotion that had begun in his. But she recovered her equanimity by the time they had travelled a dozen miles. "He has been so good in letting me go," she resumed, "and here's a note I found on my dressing-table addressed to you." "Yes, he's not an unworthy fellow," said Jude, glancing at the note. "I am ashamed of myself for hating him because he married you." "According to the rule of women's whims, I suppose I ought suddenly to love him because he has let me go so generously and unexpectedly," she answered, smiling. "But I am so cold or devoid of gratitude or so something that even this generosity hasn't made me love him or repent or want to stay with him as his wife, although I do feel I like his large-mindedness and respect him more than ever." "It may not work so well for us as if he had been less kind and you had run away against his will," murmured Jude. "That I never would have done." Jude's eyes rested musingly on her face. Then he suddenly kissed her, and was going to kiss her again. "No, only once now, please, Jude." "That's rather cruel," he answered, but acquiesced. "Such a strange thing has happened to me," Jude continued after a silence. "Arabella has actually written to ask me to get a divorce from her, in kindness to her, she says. She wants to honestly and legally marry that man she has already married virtually, and begs me to enable her to do it." "What have you done?" "I have agreed. I thought at first I couldn't do it without getting her into trouble about that second marriage, and I don't want to injure her in any way. Perhaps she's no worse than I am after all. But nobody knows about it over here, and I find it will not be a difficult proceeding at all. If she wants to start afresh, I have only 2 obvious reasons for not hindering her." "Then you'll be free?" "Yes, I shall be free." "Where are we booked for?" she asked, with the discontinuity that marked her tonight. "Aldbrickham, as I said." "But it will be very late when we get there." "Yes, I thought of that, and I wired for a room for us at the Temperance Hotel there." "One?" "Yes, one." She looked at him. "Oh, Jude!" Sue bent her forehead against the corner of the compartment. "I thought you might do it, and that I was deceiving you, but I didn't mean that." In the pause which followed, Jude's eyes fixed themselves with a stultified expression on the opposite seat. "Well," he said, "well." He remained in silence, and seeing how discomforted he was, she put her face against his cheek, murmuring, "Don't be vexed, dear." "Oh, there's no harm done," he said. "But I understood it like that. Is this a sudden change of mind?" "You have no right to ask me such a question, and I shan't answer," she said, smiling. "My dear one, your happiness is more to me than anything, although we seem to verge on quarrelling so often, and your will is law to me. I am something more than a mere selfish fellow, I hope. Have it as you wish." On reflection, his brow showed perplexity. "But perhaps it is that you don't love me, not that you have become conventional. Much as, under your teaching, I hate convention, I hope it is that, not the other terrible alternative." Even at this obvious moment for candour, Sue could not be quite candid as to the state of that mystery, her heart. "Put it down to my timidity," she said with hurried evasiveness, "to a woman's natural timidity when the crisis comes. I may feel as well as you that I have a perfect right to live with you as you thought, from this moment. I may hold the opinion that, in a proper state of society, the father of a woman's child will be as much a private matter of hers as the cut of her underlinen, on whom nobody will have any right to question her. But partly, perhaps, because it is by his generosity that I am now free, I would rather not be other than a little rigid. If there had been a rope ladder, and he had run after us with pistols, it would have seemed different, and I may have acted otherwise. But don't press me and criticize me, Jude. Assume that I haven't the courage of my opinions. I know I am a poor miserable creature. My nature is not so passionate as yours." He repeated simply, "I thought what I naturally thought. But if we are not lovers, we are not. Phillotson thought so, I am sure. See, here is what he's written to me." He opened the letter she had brought, and read, "I make only one condition, that you are tender and kind to her. I know you love her, but even love may be cruel at times. You are made for each other. It is obvious, palpable, to any unbiased older person. You were all along the shadowy third in my short life with her. I repeat, take care of Sue." "He's a good fellow, isn't he?" she said, with latent tears. On reconsideration, she added, "He was very resigned to letting me go, too resigned almost. I never was so near being in love with him as when he made such thoughtful arrangements for my being comfortable on my journey and offering to provide money. Yet I was not. If I loved him ever so little as a wife, I'd go back to him even now. But you don't, do you?" "It is true, oh, so terribly true. I don't." "Nor me neither, I half fear," he said pettishly. "Nor anybody, perhaps. Sue, sometimes when I am vexed with you, I think you are incapable of real love." "That's not good and loyal of you," she said, and drawing away from him as far as she could, looked severely out into the darkness. She added in hurt tones, without turning round, "My liking for you is not as some women's, perhaps, but it is a delight in being with you, of a supremely delicate kind, and I don't want to go further and risk it by an attempt to intensify it. I quite realized that as woman with man it was a risk to come, but as me with you, I resolved to trust you to set my wishes above your gratification. Don't discuss it further, dear Jude. Of course, if it would make you reproach yourself. But you do like me very much, Sue. Say you do. Say that you do a quarter, a tenth as much as I do you, and I'll be content. I've let you kiss me, and that tells enough. Just once or so. Well, don't be a greedy boy. He leant back and did not look at her for a long time. That episode in her past history of which she had told him, of the poor Christminster graduate whom she had handled thus, returned to Jude's mind, and he saw himself as a possible second in such a torturing destiny. "This is a queer elopement," he murmured. "Perhaps you are making a cat's paw of me with Phillotson all this time. Upon my word, it almost seems so, to see you sitting up there so prim." "Now you mustn't be angry. I won't let you," she coaxed, turning and moving nearer to him. "You did kiss me just now, you know, and I didn't dislike you to. I own it, Jude. Only I don't want to let you do it again just yet, considering how we are circumstanced, don't you see?" He could never resist her when she pleaded, as she well knew, and they sat side by side with joined hands till she aroused herself at some thought. "I can't possibly go to that Temperance Inn after your telegraphing that message." "Why not?" "You can see well enough." "Very well. There'll be some other one open, no doubt. I have sometimes thought, since your marrying Phillotson because of a stupid scandal, that under the affectation of independent views you are as enslaved to the social code as any woman I know. Not mentally, but I haven't the courage of my views, as I said before. I didn't marry him altogether because of the scandal, but sometimes a woman's love of being loved gets the better of her conscience, and though she is agonized at the thought of treating a man cruelly, she encourages him to love her while she doesn't love him at all. Then, when she sees him suffering, her remorse sets in, and she does what she can to repair the wrong." "You simply mean that you flirted outrageously with him, poor old chap, and then repented, and to make reparation married him, though you tortured yourself to death by doing it." "Well, if you will put it brutally, it was a little like that and the scandal together, and your concealing from me what you ought to have told me before." He could see that she was distressed and tearful at his criticisms, and soothed her, saying, "There, dear, don't mind. Crucify me if you will. You know you are all the world to me, whatever you do." "I am very bad and unprincipled. I know you think that," she said, trying to blink away her tears. "I think and know you are my dear Sue, from whom neither length nor breadth nor things present nor things to come can divide me." Though so sophisticated in many things, she was such a child in others that this satisfied her, and they reached the end of their journey on the best of terms. It was about 10 o'clock when they arrived at Aldbrickham, the county town of North Wessex. As she would not go to the Temperance Hotel because of the form of his telegram, Jude inquired for another, and a youth who volunteered to find one wheeled their luggage to the George further on, which proved to be the inn at which Jude had stayed with Arabella on that one occasion of their meeting after their division for years. Owing, however, to their now entering it by another door, and to his preoccupation, he did not at first recognize the place. When they had engaged their respective rooms, they went down to a late supper. During Jude's temporary absence, the waiting-maid spoke to Sue. "I think, ma'am, I remember your relation or friend or whatever he is coming here once before, late, just like this, with his wife, a lady, at any rate, that wasn't you by no manner of means, just as mad be with you now." "Oh, do you?" said Sue, with a certain sickness of heart, "though I think you must be mistaken. How long ago was it?" "About a month or two. A handsome, full-figured woman. They had this room." When Jude came back and sat down to supper, Sue seemed moping and miserable. "Jude," she said to him plaintively at their parting that night upon the landing, "it is not so nice and pleasant as it used to be with us. I don't like it here. I can't bear the place, and I don't like you so well as I did. How fidgeted you seem, dear. Why do you change like this?" "Because it was cruel to bring me here." "Why?" "You were lately here with Arabella. There, now I have said it." "Dear me, why," said Jude, looking round him. "Yes, it is the same. I really didn't know it, Sue. Well, it is not cruel, since we have come here as we have, two relations staying together. How long ago was it you were here? Tell me, tell me." "The day before I met you in Christminster, when we went back to Mary Green together. I told you I had met her." "Yes, you said you had met her, but you didn't tell me all. Your story was that you had met as estranged people who were not husband and wife at all in heaven's sight, not that you had made it up with her." "We didn't make it up," he said sadly. "I can't explain, Sue." "You've been false to me, you, my last hope, and I shall never forget it, never." "But by your own wish, dear Sue, we are only to be friends, not lovers. It is so very inconsistent of you to—" "Friends can be jealous." "I don't see that. You concede nothing to me, and I have to concede everything to you. After all, you were on good terms with your husband at that time." "No, I wasn't, Jude. Oh, how can you think so? And you have taken me in, even if you didn't intend to." She was so mortified that he was obliged to take her into her room and close the door, lest the people should hear. "Was it this room?" "Yes, it was. I see by your look it was. I won't have it for mine. Oh, it was treacherous of you to have her again. I jumped out of the window." "But, Sue, she was after all my legal wife, if not—" Slipping down on her knees, Sue buried her face in the bed and wept. "I never knew such an unreasonable, such a dog-in-the-manger feeling," said Jude. "I am not to approach you, nor anybody else." "Oh, don't you understand my feeling? Why don't you? Why are you so gross? I jumped out of the window." "Jumped out of window?" "I can't explain." It was true that he did not understand her feelings very well, but he did a little, and began to love her none the less. I thought you cared for nobody, desired nobody in the world but me at that time, and ever since," continued Sue. "It is true, I did not and don't now," said Jude, as distressed as she. "But you must have thought much of her, or—" "No, I need not. You don't understand me either. Women never do. Why should you get into such a tantrum about nothing?" Looking up from the quilt, she pouted provokingly. "If it hadn't been for that, perhaps I would have gone on to the Temperance Hotel after all, as you proposed, for I was beginning to think I did belong to you." "Oh, it is of no consequence," said Jude distantly. "I thought, of course, that she had never really been your wife since she left you of her own accord years and years ago. My sense of it was that a parting such as yours from her and mine from him ended the marriage. I can't say more without speaking against her, and I don't want to do that," said he. "Yet I must tell you one thing, which would settle the matter in any case. She has married another man, really married him. I knew nothing about it till after the visit we made here." "Married another? It is a crime, as the world treats it, but does not believe." "There, now you are yourself again. Yes, it is a crime, as you don't hold, but would fearfully concede. But I shall never inform against her, and it is evidently a prick of conscience in her that has led her to urge me to get a divorce, that she may remarry this man legally. So you perceive I shall not be likely to see her again." "And you didn't really know anything of this when you saw her?" said Sue more gently, as she rose. "I did not. Considering all things, I don't think you ought to be angry, darling." "I am not, but I shan't go to the Temperance Hotel." He laughed. "Never mind," he said. "So that I am near you, I am comparatively happy. It is more than this earthly wretch called me deserves. You spirit, you disembodied creature, you dear, sweet, tantalizing phantom, hardly flesh at all, so that when I put my arms round you, I almost expect them to pass through you as through air. Forgive me for being gross, as you call it. Remember that our calling cousins, when really strangers, was a snare. The enmity of our parents gave a piquancy to you in my eyes that was intenser even than the novelty of ordinary new acquaintance. Say those pretty lines, then, from Shelley's Epipsychidion, as if they meant me," she solicited, slanting up closer to him as they stood. "Don't you know them?" "I know hardly any poetry," he replied mournfully. "Don't you? These are some of them. There was a being whom my spirit oft met on its visioned wanderings far aloft, a seraph of heaven too gentle to be human, veiling beneath that radiant form of woman. Oh, it is too flattering, so I won't go on. But say it's me, say it's me." "It is you, dear, exactly like you. Now I forgive you, and you shall kiss me just once, there, not very long." She put the tip of her finger gingerly to her cheek, and he did as commanded. "You do care for me very much, don't you, in spite of my not, you know?" "Yes, sweet," he said with a sigh, and bade her good night. 6. In returning to his native town of Shaston as schoolmaster, Phillotson had won the interest and awakened the memories of the inhabitants, who, though they did not honour him for his miscellaneous acquirements as he would have been honoured elsewhere, retained for him a sincere regard. When, shortly after his arrival, he brought home a pretty wife, awkwardly pretty for him, if he did not take care, they said, they were glad to have her settle among them. For some time after her flight from that home, Sue's absence did not excite comment. Her place as monitor in the school was taken by another young woman within a few days of her vacating it, which substitution also passed without remark, Sue's services having been of a provisional nature only. When, however, a month had passed, and Phillotson casually admitted to an acquaintance that he did not know where his wife was staying, curiosity began to be aroused, till, jumping to conclusions, people ventured to affirm that Sue had played him false and run away from him. The schoolmaster's growing languor and listlessness over his work gave countenance to the idea. Though Phillotson had held his tongue as long as he could, except to his friend Gillingham, his honesty and directness would not allow him to do so when misapprehensions as to Sue's conduct spread abroad. On a Monday morning, the chairman of the school committee called, and after attending to the business of the school, drew Phillotson aside out of earshot of the children. "You'll excuse my asking, Phillotson, since everybody is talking of it, is this true as to your domestic affairs, that your wife's going away was on no visit, but a secret elopement with a lover? If so, I condole with you." "Don't," said Phillotson. "There was no secret about it." "She has gone to visit friends?" "No." "Then what has happened?" "She has gone away under circumstances that usually call for condolence with the husband, but I gave my consent." The chairman looked as if he had not apprehended the remark. "What I say is quite true," Phillotson continued testily. "She asked leave to go away with her lover, and I let her. Why shouldn't I? A woman of full age, it was a question of her own conscience, not for me. I was not her jailer. I can't explain any further. I don't wish to be questioned." The children observed that much seriousness marked the faces of the two men, and went home and told their parents that something new had happened about Mrs. Phillotson. Then Phillotson's little maid-servant, who was a schoolgirl just out of her standards, said that Mr. Phillotson had helped his wife's packing, had offered her what money she required, and had written a friendly letter to her young man, telling him to take care of her. The chairman of committee thought the matter over, and talked to the other managers of the school, till a request came to Phillotson to meet them privately. The meeting lasted a long time, and at the end the schoolmaster came home, looking as usual pale and worn. Gillingham was sitting in his house awaiting him. "Well, it is as you said," observed Phillotson, flinging himself down wearily in a chair. "They have requested me to send in my resignation on account of my scandalous conduct in giving my tortured wife her liberty, or, as they call it, condoning her adultery. But I shan't resign." "I think I would." "I won't. It is no business of theirs. It doesn't affect me in my public capacity at all. They may expel me if they like. If you make a fuss, it will get into the papers, and you'll never get appointed to another school. You see, they have to consider what you did as done by a teacher of youth, and its effects as such upon the morals of the town, and, to ordinary opinion, your position is indefensible. You must let me say that." To this good advice, however, Phillotson would not listen. "I don't care," he said. "I don't go unless I am turned out, and for this reason, that by resigning I acknowledge I have acted wrongly by her, when I am more and more convinced every day that in the sight of heaven and by all natural, straightforward humanity, I have acted rightly." Gillingham saw that his rather headstrong friend would not be able to maintain such a position as this, but he said nothing further, and in due time, indeed, in a quarter of an hour, the formal letter of dismissal arrived, the managers having remained behind to write it after Phillotson's withdrawal. The latter replied that he should not accept dismissal, and called a public meeting, which he attended, although he looked so weak and ill that his friend implored him to stay at home. When he stood up to give his reasons for contesting the decision of the managers, he advanced them firmly, as he had done to his friend, and contended moreover that the matter was a domestic theory which did not concern them. This they overruled, insisting that the private eccentricities of a teacher came quite within their sphere of control, as it touched the morals of those he taught. Phillotson replied that he did not see how an act of natural charity could injure morals. All the respectable inhabitants and well-to-do fellow natives of the town were against Phillotson to a man, but somewhat to his surprise, some dozen or more champions rose up in his defence as from the ground. It has been stated that Shaston was the anchorage of a curious and interesting group of itinerants who frequented the numerous fairs and markets held up and down Wessex during the summer and autumn months. Although Phillotson had never spoken to one of these gentlemen, they now nobly led the forlorn hope in his defence. The body included 2 cheapjacks, a shooting-gallery proprietor and the ladies who loaded the guns, a pair of boxing masters, a steam roundabout manager, 2 travelling broom-makers who called themselves widows, a gingerbread stall-keeper, a swing-boat owner, and a test-your-strength man. This generous phalanx of supporters, and a few others of independent judgment, whose own domestic experiences had been not without vicissitude, came up and warmly shook hands with Phillotson, after which they expressed their thoughts so strongly to the meeting that issue was joined, the result being a general scuffle, wherein a blackboard was split, 3 panes of the school windows were broken, an ink bottle was spilled over a town councillor's shirt front, A churchwarden was dealt such a topper with the map of Palestine that his head went straight through Samaria, and many black eyes and bleeding noses were given, one of which, to everybody's horror, was the venerable incumbent's, owing to the zeal of an emancipated chimney-sweep who took the side of Phillotson's party. When Phillotson saw the blood running down the rector's face, he deplored almost in groans the untoward and degrading circumstances, regretted that he had not resigned when called upon, and went home so ill that next morning he could not leave his bed. The farcical yet melancholy event was the beginning of a serious illness for him, and he lay in his lonely bed in the pathetic state of mind of a middle-aged man who perceives at length that his life, intellectual and domestic, is tending to failure and gloom. Gillingham came to see him in the evenings, and on one occasion mentioned Sue's name. "She doesn't care anything about me," said Phillotson. "Why should she?" "She doesn't know you are ill." "So much the better for both of us. Where are her lover and she living?" "At Melchester, I suppose. At least he was living there some time ago." When Gillingham reached home, he sat and reflected, and at last wrote an anonymous line to Sue, on the bare chance of its reaching her, the letter being enclosed in an envelope addressed to Jude at the diocesan capital. Arriving at that place, it was forwarded to Mary Green in North Wessex, and thence to Aldbrickham by the only person who knew his present address, the widow who had nursed his aunt. 3 days later, in the evening, when the sun was going down in splendour over the lowlands of Blackmoor, and making the Shaston windows like tongues of fire to the eyes of the rustics in that vale, the sick man fancied that he heard somebody come to the house, and a few minutes after there was a tap at the bedroom door. Phillotson did not speak. The door was hesitatingly opened, and there entered Sue. She was in light spring clothing, and her advent seemed ghostly, like the flitting in of a moth. He turned his eyes upon her and flushed, but appeared to check his primary impulse to speak. "I have no business here," she said, bending her frightened face to him, "but I heard you were ill, very ill, and, as I know that you recognize other feelings between man and woman than physical love, I have come. I am not very ill, my dear friend, only unwell. I didn't know that, and I am afraid that only a severe illness would have justified my coming." "Yes, yes, and I almost wish you had not come. It is a little too soon, that's all I mean. Still, let us make the best of it. You haven't heard about the school, I suppose?" "No. What about it?" "Only that I'm going away from here to another place. The managers and I don't agree, and we are going to part, that's all." Sue did not for a moment, either now or later, suspect what troubles had resulted to him from letting her go. It never once seemed to cross her mind, and she had received no news whatever from Shaston. They talked on slight and ephemeral subjects, and when his tea was brought up, he told the amazed little servant that a cup was to be set for Sue. That young person was much more interested in their history than they supposed, and as she descended the stairs, she lifted her eyes and hands in grotesque amazement. While they sipped, Sue went to the window and thoughtfully said, "It is such a beautiful sunset, Richard." "They are mostly beautiful from here, owing to the rays crossing the mist of the vale, but I lose them all, as they don't shine into this gloomy corner where I lie. Wouldn't you like to see this particular one? It is like heaven opened." "Ah, yes, but I can't." "I'll help you to." "No, the bedstead can't be shifted. But see how I mean." She went to where a swing glass stood, and taking it in her hands, carried it to a spot by the window where it would catch the sunshine, moving the glass till the beams were reflected into Phillidson's face. "There, you can see the great red sun now," she said, "and I am sure it will cheer you. I do so hope it will." She spoke with a childlike, repentant kindness, as if she could not do too much for him. Phillotson smiled sadly. "You are an odd creature," he murmured, as the sun glowed in his eyes. "The idea of your coming to see me after what has passed." "Don't let us go back upon that," she said quickly. "I have to catch the omnibus for the train, as Jude doesn't know I have come. He was out when I started, so I must return home almost directly. Richard, I am so very glad you are better. You don't hate me, do you? You have been such a kind friend to me." "I am glad to know you think so," said Phillotson huskily. "No, I don't hate you." It grew dusk quickly in the gloomy room during their intermittent chat, and when candles were brought and it was time to leave, she put her hand in his, or rather allowed it to flit through his, for she was significantly light in touch. She had nearly closed the door when he said, "Sue." He had noticed that in turning away from him, tears were on her face and a quiver in her lip. It was bad policy to recall her. He knew it while he pursued it, but he could not help it. She came back. "Sue," he murmured, "do you wish to make it up and stay? I'll forgive you and condone everything." "Oh, you can't, she said hastily. "You can't condone it now." "He is your husband now, in effect, you mean, of course." "You may assume it. He is obtaining a divorce from his wife, Arabella." "His wife? It is altogether news to me that he has a wife." "It was a bad marriage." "Like yours." "Like mine. He is not doing it so much on his own account as on hers. She wrote and told him it would be a kindness to her, since then she could marry and live respectably, and Jude has agreed." "A wife? A kindness to her?" "Ah, yes, a kindness to her to release her altogether. But I don't like the sound of it. I can forgive, Sue." "No, no. You can't have me back now I have been so wicked as to do what I have done." There had arisen in Sue's face that incipient fright which showed itself whenever he changed from friend to husband, and which made her adopt any line of defense against marital feeling in him. "I must go now. I'll come again, may I?" "I don't ask you to go, even now. I ask you to stay." "I thank you, Richard, but I must. You are not so ill as I thought. I cannot stay." "She's his from lips to heel," said Phillotson, but so faintly that in closing the door she did not hear it. The dread of a reactionary change in the schoolmaster's sentiments, coupled perhaps with a faint shamefacedness at letting him even know what a slipshod lack of thoroughness, from a man's point of view, characterized her transferred allegiance, prevented her telling him of her, thus far, incomplete relations with Jude, and Phillotson lay writhing like a man in hell as he pictured the prettily dressed, maddening compound of sympathy and averseness who bore his name, returning impatiently to the home of her lover. Gillingham was so interested in Philip's affairs, and so seriously concerned about him, that he walked up the hillside to Shaston 2 or 3 times a week, although, there and back, it was a journey of 9 miles, which had to be performed between tea and supper after a hard day's work in school. When he called on the next occasion after Sue's visit, his friend was downstairs, and Gillingham noticed that his restless mood had been supplanted by a more fixed and composed one. "She's been here since you called last," said Phillotson. "Not Mrs. Phillotson?" "Yes." "Ah, you have made it up?" "No, She just came, patted my pillow with her little white hand, played the thoughtful nurse for half an hour, and went away. Well, I'm hanged. A little hussy. What do you say? Oh, nothing. What do you mean? I mean, what a tantalizing, capricious little woman. If she were not your wife. She is not. She is another man's, except in name and law. And I have been thinking, it was suggested to me by a conversation I had with her, that in kindness to her I ought to dissolve the legal tie altogether, which, singularly enough, I think I can do, now she has been back, and refused my request to stay, after I said I had forgiven her. I believed that fact would afford me opportunity of doing it, though I did not see it at the moment. What's the use of keeping her chained on to me if she doesn't belong to me? I feel absolutely certain that she would welcome my taking such a step as the greatest charity to her, for though as a fellow creature she sympathizes with and pities me, and even weeps for me, as a husband she cannot endure me. She loathes me. There's no use in mincing words. She loathes me, and my only manly and dignified and merciful course is to complete what I have begun. And for worldly reasons, too, it will be better for her to be independent. I have hopelessly ruined my prospects because of my decision as to what was best for us, though she does not know it. I see only dire poverty ahead, from my feet to the grave, for I can be accepted as teacher no more. I shall probably have enough to do to make both ends meet during the remainder of my life, now my occupation's gone, and I shall be better able to bear it alone. I may as well tell you that what has suggested my letting her go is some news she brought me, the news that Fawley is doing the same. Oh, he had a spouse too? A queer couple, these lovers. Well, I don't want your opinion on that. What I was going to say is that my liberating her can do her no possible harm, and will open up a chance of happiness for her which she has never dreamt of hitherto, and then they'll be able to marry, as they ought to have done at first. Gillingham did not hurry to reply. I may disagree with your motive, he said gently, for he respected views he could not share. But I think you are right in your determination, if you can carry it out. I doubt, however, if you can. Part Fifth. At Aldbrickham and Elsewhere. Thy aerial part, and all the fiery parts which are mingled in thee, though by nature they have an upward tendency, still, in obedience to the disposition of the universe, they are overpowered here in the compound mass, the body. M. Antoninus. Long. 1. How Gillingham's doubts were disposed of will most quickly appear by passing over the series of dreary months and incidents that followed the events of the last chapter, and coming on to a Sunday in the February of the year following. Sue and Jude were living in Aldbrickham in precisely the same relations that they had established between themselves when she left Shaston to join him the year before. The proceedings in the law courts had reached their consciousness, but as a distant sound and an occasional missive which they hardly understood. They had met, as usual, to breakfast together in the little house with Jude's name on it that he had taken at £15 a year, with £3.10 extra for rates and taxes, and furnished with his aunt's ancient and lumbering goods, which had cost him about their full value to bring all the way from Mary Green. Sue kept house and managed everything,